Welcome, everyone, to our collective experiences. I'm your host for this wild ride that is the life of an experiencer. For those just tuning in, I'm not just your host. I am also an experiencer. On this podcast, I will be exploring the good, the bad, and a lot of the times the ugly about coming to grips with and the acceptance of being an experiencer. All the shame, questions, and frankly feeling like you're fucking crazy at times. In the first episode, I shared my first foray into the transformative with my near-death experience. I will continue to share with you my experiences and how I experienced them at the time. Not just the experience, but the feelings that they uncovered. In this episode, I will delve into my first UFO sighting. Although as time progressed, this quickly became apparent this was only one of many throughout my life. Then we will travel back to 1967 in rural Manitoba, and I will recount my mom's own close encounter with her three siblings on a foggy morning. And if you're an experiencer, please either reach out via the comments or I'll leave my email in the show notes. I would love to talk to others with experiences and explore how they have changed and shaped your life. I know they have mine. So, welcome again to our collective experiences, episode 2. We're on the road, heading from Rocky Mountain House back to camp. And while my body is preoccupied with navigating the roads, my thoughts start to wander, and I'm shocked that it's been 2 months since I've been off work. And yet, something gnaws at the edges of my consciousness, a feeling of unease that refuses to be ignored. Physically, the healing is progressing amazingly, and my surgeon's satisfaction is a glimmer of hope, which I try to hold on to. As the days pass by, one after the other, I am busy, even if I'm not working. My family has been helping me finish the condo so we can move in the near future. And we have been doing a lot of trips into the outdoors. I have this push, maybe even I don't even know how to say it. I would say longing, but no, that's not the right word either. I have this pull to go to nature while I'm healing. Camping trips and side-by-side rides with the kids paint a picture of happiness, but beneath the surface of my smiles, there lurks the shadows of something that needs to be explored. If I only knew what. And that damn cryptic message still hangs high above me, whisperings of finality, urging introspection, and the words, "This is your last chance," are still echoing and ringing within my mind and is getting louder and louder with every passing day. A feeling of urgency is clouding my waking hours and haunting my dreams. I can feel the storm starting to form deep within myself, and the only thing keeping me upright and afloat is weed. That sweet, sweet, pungent smoke curling around and deep into my lungs caresses and soothes my emotions, holding the return of my childhood nightmares to the fringes of my consciousness. While my personal demons are being fought, the outside world threatens to add more. The meteoric rise of Dogecoin, which is a huge reminder of lost potential because the digital coins that I spent a measly $120 13 years ago are locked long ago behind a forgotten password on my computer. The keys to my financial salvation remains frustratingly locked away and a constant reminder. But between all of that, there is one obsession that reigns supreme: UFOs. And I know, shocking, right? The magnetic pull draws me deeper into the labyrinth of the unknown, which has ignited a flame of fascination that refuses to be extinguished. Obsession is mingled and mixed with curiosity, further blurring the lines between reality and the question, am I going crazy? But enough of that. Camping. We're camping. Oh, I love camping. And we're camping just north of Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, in the tail end of our Canadian summer. And it's not very long. It's like, that's how long our summer is. It's really nice though. We're on the road heading from Rocky Mountain House back to camp. The kids are in the back, dirt clinging to their clothes and faces, hair's a mess and smelling of campfire and sunscreen. It's perfect. Headphones on and watching tablets. My truck's humming along the highway, music filling the air while my wife is in the seat next to me, engrossed in her Kindle. When, all of a sudden, my oldest daughter yells out, "What's that?" I quickly look back at her, and her eyes wide and her mouth gaping. She is pointing at the sky. I quickly follow her gaze and I see it. Why is there a flying white football? What the fuck is that? And it's big. It has to be the size of an airliner. Easily. And it's so fast. But once we're both locked onto it, seemingly like it knows we're watching it, it slows down. The object is perfectly white, underneath some shimmering force field which has that oil on water rainbow effect. Then, once it is in front of the truck, my shock temporarily wears off and I'm yelling to get the binoculars repeatedly and frantically, which were sitting right between the kids. I look over and my wife won't look up. Why won't she look up? Why won't you look up? I'm good. It's an airplane. She later tells me that she couldn't look up. Like there was some outside force not allowing her to see. Still super weird. So, my oldest is tracking it to the west while I find somewhere to pull over. And like, this is super crazy. I've always wanted to see a UFO. Holy shit. I keep cranking my neck and head back and forth between the road and the object, trying so hard not to lose it. Then, all of a sudden, it stops midair and drops what has to be 500 feet straight down in a matter of seconds. I find a spot to pull over and come to a screeching halt, gravel and dust spewing from under the truck and billowing up around us. I quickly look back and my oldest and I see the object make a hard 90-degree turn north straight into a cloud. We wait there, staring, holding our breath. Seconds turn into minutes, which turn into what feels like an eternity, waiting for it to come back out, but nothing. Nothing pops out. Even though this was maybe a whole minute, it felt like an eternity. Reluctantly, I put the truck back into gear and drive back to camp, where I can hardly wait to tell my waiting parents. I come flying into camp at Mock Chicken, swing the door open and start recounting everything that we saw while I'm still halfway out of the vehicle. Barely pausing for breath and retelling at a rapid pace, they listen and ask questions. My daughter and I each draw a rough sketch of what we saw, amazed at the similarities, and then we toss them in the fire. Because, well, why would we keep them? My dad listens and then says how he hopes he will get to see a UFO one of these days. And my mom goes, nice. That's it. Nice. But, to be fair, my mom and her 3 siblings had an encounter with beings landing on the driveway at the family farm in rural Manitoba. So, needless to say, she was not that surprised. It was a foggy, damp, heavy morning. Mom and her two younger sisters and younger brother were bored and wanted to play their favorite game of shadows in the fog. They were aged 3 to 10, and they each had their favorite toy. Mom had her bike, her brother had a tractor, and her younger sisters had a wagon and ride-on horse. They left the house and started towards the back corner of the farm, up the gravel road to the old location of the original house, which had fallen in disrepair years ago. The roof had collapsed and grass and weeds sprung up around it. Mom was skipping along while pushing her bike so as not to get too far ahead of her younger siblings while kicking stones as she happened to see them, pushing up her glasses as they slid down her nose, and listening to the chatter around her, they started to play their game. I see a bear. Ooh, I see a spooky ghost. They continued to skip along, pointing out shadows to each other, trying to be the most creative of the gang. When they came alongside the field, the road was straight and flat ahead, but off to the left in the field, they saw a shadow that looked too big to be real, and it was shaped like a cowboy hat. It was the size of the granary tower, but that was on the other side of the farm. It wasn't supposed to be here, and it wasn't that shape at all. They all stopped and stared at the giant shadow in front of them. They were only 50 feet away from this immensity and could hear no sound, just silence. An opening filled with white light appeared at the bottom of the shadow, and out came an object that hovered a foot off the ground, making a slight humming noise. The craft looked like a turtle shell to Mom, and it was smooth and silver, and she couldn't quite understand what she saw. There was no reference for this. They just got TV, and they only had one channel. It came straight towards them, several feet, and then darted into the ditch and came still closer. It stopped, and another doorway appeared on the craft. 3 pixies exited the craft and started dancing up the ditch and onto the ground. All were small, 3 feet tall, thin, spindly, and wearing skin-tight suits of different bright colors, of oranges and greens. Their heads were covered by a seamless helmet, and they could not see any features. They continued their dance, and they seemed like they wanted to play with them, almost beckoning them to come with them. When the youngest sister took a step forward. Next thing my mom remembers is they're running for their lives down the road, her siblings in hot pursuit, each dragging their toy, not caring if they break it or not, just running like death is behind them. Screaming, they all come rushing into the main yard yelling for help. Grandpa comes rushing out of the house and sees them all running towards him, white and pale as ghosts. He tells them to show him where they were. Each child grabs a free hand or leg of my grandfather, and they all direct him to where they saw the beings, while my granny and grandma stay on the porch and wait to hear what is going on. As they approach the site, nothing is seen in the fog, and all they find is 3 circles left smoldering in the field. My grandpa squats down to examine it and rubs the dirt in between his fingers and asks them a couple more pointed questions. Satisfied, they quickly walk back to the house. When they get back, Granny and Grandma start telling them that a few minutes after they had departed, they heard something move over the top of them with a low humming and swooshing sound. The swooshing, the best I can describe it, because I've heard this too, is picture a whirlpool of air. That's the swooshing sound. And slowly it moved past them until it was silent again. It sounded impossibly large and moved much too slowly for any plane, just above the fog. Grandpa tells Mom and her siblings to each go to a separate room, and he grabs paper and crayons and tells each of them to draw exactly what they saw. When they are done, they all look at them together. All 4 children drew the same thing with slight variations. Grandpa gathered everything up and then burnt them. So, I guess it's a family tradition. They all tried to varying degrees to tell their story to the other kids in school and would be met with bullying or any and all other manners of abuse. This would inevitably lead to keeping it only in the family. It's a family story, and one that shaped all of my aunts and uncle, including my cousins. This is the story I grew up with, told over my entire childhood. And as an inquisitive child, every summer when we were in Manitoba at the farm, I would ask one of my aunts or uncle, grandpa or grandma, to tell me the story all over again, in between shooting squirrels and building forts, of course. I'm not sure if it was to validate something that nagged at me deep in my subconscious, something that wants to be shown or heard or seen, or if it was that I wanted to know if there was consistency in their stories. But I would get told this every year, and we would have long discussions about the others. My grandfather is an experiencer as well, but I wouldn't find out the exact depth of how much he had experienced until after his death, and I was given his journal. Of the few VHS tapes on the shelf in the farmhouse, there were several UFO documentaries, as well as the alien autopsy tape. My grandfather talked about the others not as a curiosity, but as a fact. Nonchalant about the whole subject, he had come to terms with them many years ago. His first experience was with a red orb in the 1930s following him home from school. He had witnessed various craft. He was certain that he had worked with a man for one summer that appeared out of nowhere and asked him really, really weird questions and didn't seem quite human, and then disappeared. He was also visited by beings several times a year for most of his life, and he would pull things from his body and document them, or he would be given something to cradle that wasn't human and he needed to love. He was not an educated man, like most of his generation, but he was very well versed in many subjects and had constant thirst for learning. He attributed his constant battles with cancer and their subsequent remissions to his friends. By the end of his life, he had 13 different types of cancer. Lung, skin, and blood, just to name a few. The doctors would constantly tell my mom and the family since I was born that, yep, this is the one. Make sure everything is settled. Decide on arrangements. Then, months later, he would go into remission. Baffling doctors. He would come out on the other side every time after a long struggle for 30 long years. In his journal, he only mentions one of his grandchildren. And he had 12 of us. And guess whose name came up? Yeah, you guessed it. This guy. If you're interested on hearing more of my grandfather's journal, comment down below. I would love to dedicate a whole episode to it if there's enough interest. It's insanely fascinating, all his different experiences. One other time, my mother, a couple of years later, was driving to Brownies with my grandma, and on the way she saw a green comet come shooting across the sky, heading in one direction. But the other witnesses in town later saw it go in another direction. The interesting part is that the townsfolk and my grandma actually saw it as a silver disc. My mom, for some reason, right up until now, till this day, only remembers a green comet. After witnessing our UFO, I became obsessed all over again with everything UFO related. I started devouring every podcast I could find. I would listen to them all day while at work, going through the backlog of all the old episodes I could find. The 2017 article, catching up with Tom DeLonge, Louis Elizondo, like everybody. I had always been curious, of course, always a voracious reader of sci-fi by authors such as Asimov, Heinlein, Niven, and Purnell. Anything to do with sci-fi and the fantastical, I was obsessed with. But this was different. I felt compelled to catch myself up to what was happening in the world. Not just on UFOs, but weirdly, shamanism came into my sphere, Sasquatch, and weirdly enough, I had had an encounter with Sasquatch years previous to this, but it never triggered anything quite like this. But this was different. this was more than mere fascination. It was a calling, a summons from the depths of somewhere unknown that beckoned me into the uncharted waters of what is reality. And as I delved deeper into the mysteries that surrounded me, I found myself confronted by dreams. Terrible, haunting dreams that stirred the depths of my soul and dredged up memories long buried beneath the surface. These dreams, or nightmares, or memories, or whatever they are, I hadn't had these since I was in my teens and early childhood. They were both vivid, terrifying, and confusing. Dreams of the end of the world and that I need to prepare. And dreams of being somewhere else with other things. You know those dreams that you wake up from, feeling such intensity and such realism that you question which one is real. Is it the dream or is it right now? And yet there was a glimmer of hope, a beacon of light that illuminated the path ahead. I felt and sensed the slightest glimpse of a purpose, a calling that transcended the boundaries of the ordinary, a journey that would eventually lead me to the very heart of the unknown. And so, with each passing moment, I embraced the chaos that surrounded me, hoping and praying that within the depths of uncertainty lay the keys to unlocking the mysteries of my own past and hopefully my future, knowing that nothing will ever be the same again. Thank you once again for joining me. I hope you found this episode engaging. And if you have any experiences of your own you'd like to share, please reach out to me. I'm eager to connect with any fellow experiencers and to foster a supportive, understanding, and welcoming environment where we can openly share our journeys and experiences, which I hope will allow us to heal and bond over our shared experiences. Your participation enriches our collective narrative. So, until next time on our collective experiences, with all my gratitude, take care. Thank you.